Dr. Elias Harper adjusted the strap of his field pack and took a careful step onto the soft, glowing moss of Alaris. The forest stretched around him in waves of light and shadow, each tree shimmering faintly with colors that shifted with the breeze. Tiny creatures flitted between branches, their wings leaving trails of luminescent dust. Elias's breath caught every time he looked at it. This was what he had come for, the untouched, mysterious beauty of an alien world, alive in ways humans could scarcely imagine. He had been on Alaris for 6 months, studying the plants and minor wildlife that populated the floating lakes and luminous forests. Each day had been an adventure, though solitary. He often felt the strange pang of loneliness. Despite the colony's small group of researchers, most kept to themselves. But today felt different. He sensed something in the air, a shift, subtle and electric. He moved slowly, careful not to disturb the moss underfoot. That was when he saw her. She stood still near a cluster of glowing trees, her figure slender and slightly taller than a human. Her skin shimmered faintly, almost like liquid silver, catching the forest light in waves, but it was her eyes that held him. They were enormous, luminous and iridescent, like pools of the forest's light captured in a single glance. She looked at him, and it was as if she saw him, not just his body, but his thoughts, his hesitation, his curiosity. Elias froze, unsure how to react. He had studied alien life for years, yet nothing had prepared him for the quiet intensity of this encounter. She did not speak. She did not move. She simply watched, and in that silence, Elias felt both invitation and caution. He carefully reached for the device on his belt, a small holographic projector. Gently, he pressed a button and a soft blue light glowed, forming shapes and symbols in the air. He spoke slowly, gently. "Hello, I am Elias. I come in peace." The alien woman tilted her head. Her eyes reflected the holographic shapes. A faint melody hummed in the air, barely audible, a soft sequence of tones that seemed almost like the forest itself singing. Elias' heart raced. He had not expected a response so quickly, yet he realized this might be her way of speaking. He knelt, trying to show he meant no harm. He extended a hand slowly, palm up, then pointed to himself and then to her. "I want to understand you," he said. She shifted slightly, not away, but in a way that made her outline shimmer, almost blending with the forest light. The melody grew just a little, a pattern that rose and fell like waves. Elias watched, fascinated. He had read about alien communication methods, about species that spoke in colors or emitted light patterns instead of words. But never had he imagined it could be so beautiful. For several minutes they remained like that, observer and observed. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Birds that glowed like fireflies hovered nearby, watching. Even the moss beneath them seemed to pulse in response. Elias realized he had to find a way to communicate, to build understanding without words. He pulled a small notebook from his pack and began drawing shapes, simple symbols representing himself, food, and gestures of friendship. He showed them to her one by one. Her eyes followed each line, and each time a faint shimmer spread across her skin, brighter and warmer. It was as if she was acknowledging his efforts, though in a language he could not yet grasp. He spoke softly as he drew, narrating his actions, describing himself, his home, his world. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she moved closer. Elias's heart leapt, not because he thought she trusted him yet, but because she had chosen proximity over flight. That in itself was a beginning. Hours passed in a strange rhythm. He offered gifts of bioluminescent flowers and small, harmless tools, showing her how each worked. She observed carefully, sometimes mimicking his movements, other times simply watching, and every now and then, her eyes would change, glowing more brightly, almost like a mirror of his own fascination. Elias noticed patterns in her gaze. When he touched a flower, her eyes seemed to record the motion. When he smiled, her skin shimmered in gentle waves. He began to suspect that she was not merely observing but learning, remembering, and even reflecting emotions. He dared to take another step forward, slowly, careful not to startle her. "I know we cannot speak the same language. Yet," he said, his voice soft, "but I want to know you, your world, your people. Maybe we can share something even without words." She tilted her head again, and for the first time he felt as though she understood him. Not the exact words, but the intent behind them. Elias decided to spend the night nearby, leaving the colony behind. He built a small, safe camp near her clearing, careful not to intrude on the natural environment. As night fell, the forest transformed into a spectacle of light. Plants glowed brighter, streams reflected floating colors, and creatures glimmered along the edges of the lakes. In the distance, the alien woman remained, now seated on a mossy rock, observing him. That night, Elias lay awake under the alien sky, thinking of her. He wondered about her life, her species, her thoughts. Was she alone, or had she been watching humans for some time? Did she understand why he was there? And more importantly, did she understand what he felt? The admiration, the curiosity, and the strange sense of connection he could not explain. In the early hours, he noticed a subtle change. The forest lights around her pulsed gently, in rhythm with the soft humming that seemed to come from her being. Elias realized this was her communication, a form he could almost perceive if not yet fully understand. He focused on it, allowing himself to experience the message not as words, but as emotion, calm, curious, and infinitely patient. The sun, or what humans would call a sun, a glowing orb suspended above the floating lakes, rose, casting a golden sheen on the shimmering forest. Elias knew today would be another step, another attempt at connection. He stood careful to move slowly and extended his hand once more. "I hope you can see me," he said. "I am trying. That is all I can do." She did not approach. She did not retreat. She simply observed. Her eyes caught his, and for a moment Elias felt the weight of something profound. It was neither fear nor hostility. It was acknowledgement, recognition, an understanding that perhaps in time words would not be necessary. As he prepared to leave and return to the colony for supplies, Elias took one last look at her. "I will come back," he promised softly. "I want to learn your world, please. Show me if you can." For a brief instant, her eyes shimmered in a pattern he could not describe, and then she vanished silently into the glowing forest, leaving him with the echo of her presence and a quiet hope that this meeting was only the beginning. The day passed slowly. Every hour, Elias returned to the clearing, observing, noting, hoping. Sometimes he caught glimpses of her, a flicker of light, a ripple in the trees, but she did not approach him fully. Yet the forest itself seemed to guide him, leading him gently as if encouraging patience. By evening, Elias had made a breakthrough of sorts. He realized that the way to understand her was not to push, not to demand response, but to simply exist alongside her, observing, learning, sharing gestures and emotions. He had begun to understand that communication was not always words. Sometimes it was silence, presence, and the subtle exchange of thought through the eyes and light. He decided to leave a gift, a small sphere of glowing moss, carefully enclosed in a transparent container, with a note attached using human symbols. He placed it in a clearing where he had seen her last. Then he stepped back, watching silently. Hours passed. The sphere glowed softly, reflecting the colors of the forest. And finally, from the corner of his eye, he saw her. She had returned, her eyes fixed on the gift. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a subtle movement, she touched the sphere, and the colors of the forest rippled in response. Elias smiled softly, feeling a warmth that went beyond words. It was trust. It was connection, and for the first time he realized that his curiosity, his patience, and his willingness to understand were being met in kind. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Your eyes, they are beautiful." She did not respond in words. She did not need to. Her eyes shimmered brighter than he had ever seen, reflecting the forest, the light, and perhaps a recognition of his words in the way only her kind could understand. Elias sat there for hours, watching the interplay of light and color, letting the quiet speak between them. He knew this was only the beginning. The forest, the alien woman, and the unspoken language they shared would guide him on a journey he could not yet fully comprehend. But he welcomed it with open eyes and an open heart. And as the night settled again over Ilaris, he felt the unspoken promise of friendship, of understanding, and of a connection that transcended words, species, and worlds. The next morning, Elias returned to the glowing forest before the sun, or what passed for a sun on Ilaris, had fully risen. Mist hovered over the floating lakes, sparkling faintly in the early light. The forest seemed quieter than usual, as if waiting. He carried no tools this time, only a small notebook and a handful of luminous flowers he had picked carefully, hoping to offer them as a gesture of friendship. He had learned patience was key. She would come to him on her terms. He stepped lightly, careful not to disturb the moss or the delicate plants that surrounded him. It did not take long before he saw her. She appeared at the edge of a grove, moving with a grace that made the forest seem like it followed her every motion. Her eyes met his, and he felt the same surge of wonder he had felt the first day. She made no sound, yet the air around her vibrated with a soft hum, gentle and rhythmic, as if the forest itself was singing her presence. Elias knelt slowly and placed a flower on the moss. Then he stepped back, raising his hand slightly in a gesture of peace. She approached carefully, her steps making no sound. When she reached the flower, she touched it lightly and it glowed brighter for a moment. Her eyes reflected not only the light of the flower but something deeper: curiosity, understanding, and perhaps a spark of joy. Elias's heart lifted. He realized she was learning from him, and he was learning from her. Words were unnecessary. The forest, the light, the flowers, they were all part of a language neither human nor alien needed to speak. He decided to try something new. He took out his notebook and began drawing simple patterns, representing himself, his daily life, and his intentions. When he showed her the first drawing, she leaned in, eyes widening slightly as if absorbing every detail. Then she made a small gesture, a wave of her hand that caused the air around them to shimmer faintly. Elias's eyes widened in understanding. She was responding, communicating in the way she knew best. Over the hours they continued like this. Elias would draw or leave small gifts, and she would respond with movements, lights, and hums. Sometimes, when he mimicked her gestures or repeated a pattern of light with a small device he had brought, her skin would glow in a complex sequence. He realized she was teaching him something, just as much as he was trying to teach her. At one point she moved closer than before, her eyes studying him intently. Elias felt a strange sensation, as though he could almost feel her thoughts brushing against his own. A rush of images came to him, not clear words but impressions, memories of her forest, the creatures she had grown up with, the colors of her home. He blinked, unsure if he had imagined it, but the warmth in his chest told him it was real. He decided to speak softly, hoping to match her rhythm. "I do not know your language," he said, "but I want to understand you. Will you teach me?" For a long moment she simply looked. Then she extended her hand slowly and the air shimmered around it. Elias noticed the same colors that had danced in her eyes now reflecting on the moss, the flowers, even the nearby trees. It was a language of light, emotion, and memory. He reached out, matching her gesture as best he could. When their hands were close, the forest itself seemed to hum with energy. Elias realized that he was beginning to understand her world in a way that words could never describe. He could feel the rhythms of her life, the patterns of thought, and the gentle pulse of her connection to the forest. He smiled, feeling a joy that went beyond comprehension. As the day passed, Elias and the alien woman continued to explore this silent communication. He learned to recognize her words in light and color, while she seemed fascinated by his attempts to express himself. Each interaction deepened their bond. By evening, he decided to leave her a small gift, a sphere of glowing moss he had carefully shaped. He placed it on a mossy rock and stepped back, waiting silently. The alien woman approached, her eyes catching the glow immediately. She touched the sphere and the moss reacted, shining in patterns Elias had never seen before. Her skin shimmered, and for a brief moment he felt a rush of shared understanding. He knelt beside the sphere, whispering softly, "I see you. I understand you, your eyes. They are beautiful." She did not respond with words, but her eyes reflected a brilliance that made Elias's chest tighten. The shimmer in her gaze seemed to say more than any human language ever could. For hours, they remained there, Elias watching her and she watching him, both learning and sharing in ways neither could fully describe. It was a quiet understanding, a connection born from patience, curiosity, and respect. The forest around them seemed to breathe with them, alive and luminous, celebrating a bond that transcended words. As the night descended, Elias realized he had learned something profound. Connection was possible across species, across worlds, without force or violence. It was built through observation, patience, and the willingness to truly see another being for who they were. Before leaving, he touched the moss sphere once more and whispered, "Tomorrow, I will come again." She tilted her head slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that he had been heard. And though she said nothing, the forest's glow seemed to brighten, as if celebrating the promise of another day together. Elias walked back to the colony, his mind alive with new understanding. He had met an alien being who communicated not with words but with light, memory, and presence, and in her silent ways she had taught him a lesson he would carry forever: to truly see another being, to honor their existence, and to find beauty in their eyes, even if they never spoke a word. The next day Elias returned to the glowing forest with a quiet excitement in his heart. The air smelled of sweet nectar and damp moss, and the light from the bioluminescent plants shimmered in soft waves. Today, he felt, would be a day of understanding, a step closer to truly connecting with the alien woman. He walked slowly, mindful of every rustle of the leaves beneath his boots. As he entered the clearing, she was there, standing beneath a tall tree whose branches spiraled like ribbons of light. Her eyes met his instantly, and he felt that same deep recognition he had felt on the first day. This time, however, there was a sense of anticipation, as if she knew he would understand something new. Elias knelt and held out his hand, as he had done many times before. She moved closer and extended her own hand, the air around them shimmering in waves of soft color. He noticed patterns forming in her eyes like a tapestry of memory and light. It was more vivid than ever before. He realized she was showing him visions, not with words but through her gaze, scenes of her world, her people, and her life. He blinked and saw forests like these, but larger glowing lakes that stretched to the horizon, and creatures that floated effortlessly through the air. He felt joy, wonder, and a sense of belonging. For a brief moment he understood her world as if he had been there all his life. When he looked back at her eyes, he felt a connection deeper than language. He smiled, a small human gesture, and she shimmered in response, almost as if she was smiling back in her own way. He realized that they had developed a language of light and emotion, one that needed no translation. Elias decided to share a part of his world with her. He took a small device from his pack and projected images of Earth, the oceans, mountains, cities, and the people he cared about. Her eyes widened with fascination. She reached out, and the colors from the images reflected in her gaze. He saw understanding and curiosity. Perhaps she could sense the emotions behind these images, the warmth of a family, the laughter of friends, the beauty of Earth's nature. She made a soft hum, a gentle, melodic tone that resonated with the forest around them. Elias realized she was responding, not just observing. He held her gaze and nodded, acknowledging her message. Then he drew a simple symbol in his notebook representing friendship. He showed it to her. She shimmered and moved her hand in a delicate wave as if saying she understood. Hours passed in this exchange of light, memory, and symbols. Elias learned to recognize the subtleties of her communication. Shifts in color meant curiosity or joy. Patterns of shimmer conveyed thought or emotion, and the gentle hums indicated response or approval. He began to respond naturally, letting his own presence, his gestures, and the light of his tools become part of their shared language. By mid-afternoon, Elias realized something extraordinary. The forest itself seemed to join in. Trees pulsed gently, flowers glowed brighter, and even the streams reflected their shared energy. He understood now that her species did not just live in the forest. They were part of it, and their communication extended beyond themselves into the life around them. He knelt beside her and whispered softly, "I see your world. I see you, and I understand even without words." She remained silent, yet her eyes glowed with intensity. He felt a wave of warmth and connection that filled him with awe. In that silence, he understood a truth. Sometimes the deepest bonds are formed not through words but through shared understanding, presence, and patience. As the sun began to set, Elias left a small glowing flower beside her, a gift of his own making representing gratitude and friendship. She touched it gently, her eyes shimmering as the light spread through her form. Then, in a moment of pure clarity, she leaned closer and touched his hand lightly. The forest pulsed with color in response. Elias felt as if their thoughts had met, as if a bridge had formed between their minds and hearts. He smiled, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment. "You don't need words," he said softly. "Your eyes speak everything I need to know." She shimmered again, almost like laughter, though he could not hear it. And Elias understood. This was her acknowledgement, her way of saying that the connection they had formed was mutual. The day faded into night, and the forest glowed under the alien sky. Elias sat beside her quietly, sharing the silence. He realized that his journey on Alaris was no longer just about observing alien life. It was about understanding it, respecting it, and forming a bond that transcended species, words, and worlds. As he finally rose to leave, he looked into her eyes one last time. "Tomorrow I will return," he said, his voice filled with gentle certainty. She did not speak, yet her eyes shimmered brighter than ever. He knew she had heard him. He also knew that their shared journey had only begun. Walking back to the colony, Elias felt a profound sense of hope. Humanity often rushed into new worlds seeking knowledge, resources, or power. But here, on Alaris, he had discovered something far more valuable: the ability to connect, to learn, and to grow through empathy, patience, and curiosity. He understood now that humans could truly honor other life forms, and that sometimes the deepest lessons of exploration were not about what we take, but about what we give: respect, understanding, and friendship. Elias smiled, thinking of her luminous eyes and the silent bond they had formed. In them he saw beauty, wisdom, and a reflection of what humanity could aspire to be. And in that quiet, shimmering forest, he felt certain that the connection between their worlds, though born in silence, was strong, unbreakable, and filled with promise.